welcome to Veterinary Tales, where we dive deep into the experiences of victims who suffered from veterinary villains, bad actors, whatever you want to call them, the people that would rather act irresponsibly than care for our loved ones and their patients. I'm your host, Colleen, and I'm excited to be joined by the other host, Scott Fine, the founder and creator of Joey's Legacy. Scott, how are you doing today?
Hey, Colleen, how you doing?
I'm doing great. I'm loving this San Diego weather I'm having. It's quite breezy.
Which is breezy. Yeah, breezy is good. What's the temperature like out there?
Right now it's like 75, sunny and perfect.
Perfect.
Yeah.
We get the same thing here in Lexington, in South Carolina. So.
Oh, good.
So who do we have for tonight?
Tonight we are excited to be joined by the wonderful Sandy Gosselin, who will be telling us more about Buffy's story.
Hello, Sandy Gosselin. How are you?
Hi. Thank both of you for having me as a guest. And it's just 9.5 years trying to find justice for poor Buffy.
All right. So the best place to begin is at the beginning. So why don't you tell us how Buffy came into your life, what the first few years were like, and where things made an abrupt turn?
Now, I got Buffy on as soon as she turned 8 weeks old, with every intention of going all the way in a career change with her. She became an international champion, went out on the show circuit, got gold medals from all these countries. And then, I actually had the same vet, which unfortunately I stupidly trusted for 15 years and took my dog stand. And he had OFA certified her hips and, the elbows and all that stuff. Because if I was going to bring puppies into the world with all those that are in need of home, I wanted to make sure they were perfect and, healthy. And then just a few months after that, he talked me into spaying her. And with the attitude of, well, what would happen if the puppies got abused, if this, that, and the other thing. Biggest mistake I ever made in my life was to have her spayed and to trust him. I'm just, 9.5 years, inconsolable grief, but it's Buffy that lost her life. It's Buffy that suffered.
Sandy, what was the breed, Buffy's breed?
She's a Couvage, and I got her from one of the best Couvage breeders, in the country for sure, and in the world even. I know the breed very well. They got a very high IQ. A lot of people aren't familiar with them. They look similar to a Great Pyrenees. They're from Hungary, and they're just gorgeous, big white fluffy polar bears. Actually, this little dog was the love of my life, because I had an entire lifetime of rescuing and rehoming and training and whatever. But I just thought this one was, going to be different, and I was going to do a career change and become a breeder instead of a trainer. And that's why I went out on the show circuit, not just to have gold medals on the walls, but thinking that I wanted to make sure that her puppies were the best that could ever be. And I'll forever regret having her spayed. But
so what happened from the spay surgery on? What happened from there?
I never left the office. I actually answered the phone as though I was a receptionist that day, because I didn't want him to be interrupted. And she was on that table from, lunchtime till late. We were even there after closing that night. He didn't have, I don't even know where to begin. It was just an absolutely horrible experience. I remember 10 minutes after the surgery, I had this big clang, like a pan hit the wall, and I went back there, and I wouldn't even repeat his language, but he was like, get the blankety blank out of here and let me do my job. And trust me, that was my baby on the table. I did not bother him. I just told everybody else that called he was busy. I wasn't going to let anybody else bother him. And I don't know what he did to my dog, but I found out from, the state called in an expert witness report, which was part of the state of Florida. I had an autopsy done. I found out he immobilized her on Valium and Ket something or other. She had a horrible, painful death. It was just, this was a beautiful, happy, young, playful, lovable dog, and she should still be here. even right now, she'd probably still be here because I know some of these dogs that would like to be 16. Maybe that's not the average, but 9.5 years she's been gone. No dog deserves that. I always thought vets were supposed to make, the old live longer and the sick feel better, not butcher and mutilate the young and healthy.
So after Buffy passed, what was your conversation with the bad actor in this case?
Oh, the very night that, she was dead, he called me and said, well, give me the breeder's name and I'll get you a new puppy. And I was like, oh, you killed my kid, you're going to get me another kid? I mean, what is this, like, what they call them, property? What is this, toaster, chair, whatever? Absolutely horrible. And it took a long time I wanted the records of her and all my dogs. And it took a very long time to get them. Used to go there, I think, almost every day with a friend because I didn't even dare go there by myself. And she said, well, we got to get a guy with us. And he was like, look, if you don't give us the records, we'll subpoena them. All of a sudden, I got records that, he starts off with the thing that she bled to death in her mother's arms. I mean, what doctor would write such a thing? I don't even want to repeat how sick it was, but, at one point he said, I'm not the snake, I'm the head of the snake. And he was threatening me, don't report me. I'm like, report you to who? I didn't even know there was a board of veterinary medicine, And he was like, the board. And he was like screaming, yelling. And so when I found that out, but I was, I felt like I was threatened and I was scared. And I waited until, I could be far out of the area to report him the first time. And so when I sent the report in, well, the whole process is unbelievable. You start off with, you got to get an investigator. So the investigator comes and, then I figure it's over. Oh, no, now we have to have a probable cause hearing. And I think, okay, this is over. Oh, no, now we have to go to the administrative complaint thing. And, okay, this is it, right? Well, at the first hearing, they actually called him a danger to the public, an incompetent, a number of other things. And they permanently revoked his license, which I felt like Buffy wasn't going to die in vain. At least others would be protected. I had no idea this guy had a decade of priors. So, there wasn't even any clue of that. And until after Buffy died and I learned all this stuff.
So this vet had prior instances that weren't reported that you weren't aware of?
Oh, now I have them. I have about, I think, around 400 pages of other people's complaints that weren't settled, not counting the ones that are settled. But yeah, after Buffy died, he was my vet for 15 years. I trusted him. The biggest mistake of my life because it cost Buffy her life. And, after I reported him and I found out he had a decade of priors because, one thing that Florida has good is the Freedom of Information Act. So I learned a lot. And I was sorry I ever took anybody there. But, how did they go from a permanent revocation, calling him a danger to the public, incompetent, inexcusable behavior, all this stuff, to 3 months later, it's a 50-year suspension. Well, okay, to me, that's still justice for Buffy. Others will still be protected. I could sort of deal with that. But still, it's not going to bring Buffy back. It's just that it helps others. So it's like, instead of being a dead victim, she was a dead hero, I guess, but in my mind. But then they turned around, and months after that, and this is all in less than a calendar year, they gave him his license back. Like, are you kidding me? I mean, it's like, so I guess somebody knows how to play the system. I don't know, but, oh, he needs help. He's got to go to rehab, whatever. I mean, how many have to suffer and die before they permanently close these revolving doors? What does it take? I don't know. But the
Sandy,
whole process.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. Sandy, do you know what event caused the Florida board to reinstate his license? Do you know what happened?
Oh, he had a bunch of stipulations, and I guess, he went into rehab. But I was told, and I have some credible witnesses that saw him open just days after they changed they went from the revocation to the suspension, and he was supposedly in rehab, and then all of a sudden, just days later, he was back out there open for business, and made some calls and told everybody. But I don't know. I mean, he was supposed to be monitored by another vet. Never saw another vet there. Other people told me they never saw another vet there. And I don't understand the whole thing. And it was almost like they were applauding him that he's all cured, like in and out of rehab and you're all fixed. Well, I'm not so sure about that. I said to the state at that time, it's like, you know what? If I was drunk and I killed somebody, would you give me my driver's license back if I went and said, oh, I quit drinking? I don't think so. I mean, what is this? How many have to die? I know cases after case. I mean, when this first happened, I thought it was just a problem with this vet, my little girl, and me in the state. And all of a sudden, I found out it was a nationwide problem. And then I went, oh my God, it's a universal problem. They're getting away with it's so self-governed. Make your own laws, change your own laws, don't even abide by your own laws. The whole thing just turns my stomach.
Well, that's the problem. The boards, all the boards, not just Florida, all of the boards failed to discipline their colleagues firmly and fairly. And progressively, the second and third time, the punishment should be increasing instead of it being essentially the same slap on the hand, public reprimand, $1,000 fine, and don't do it again. There's no incentive for these bad actors not to do it again when they put profits above the welfare of their patients. Sandy, let me ask you a question. Do you know how many times in the 10 plus years that this bad actor has been practicing veterinary medicine, that his license has been suspended and then reinstated? Was it just for Buffy, or was it any other time in the past?
Oh no, it was. You look at the public records; it was suspended more than once and given back. Now, to me, if one wrongfully dies, it's one too many. There is a huge difference between a human mistake and outright wrongdoing, multiple wrongdoing for multiple years. We should be able to, I thought we should be able to trust in somebody who had a title as a doctor. I would assume we could. Obviously, I will never do that again. I had a friend that she had written, she's a very well-known lawyer, and she owns a winter place rather, in Florida. And she wrote to the state and she said, listen, I had started that petition on Check Your Vet. She said, well, what if we have an emergency? We should be able to stop at any vet from Jacksonville to Key West and trust that only competent, drug-free, sober, hearing vets or good vets have licenses. And we don't have time in an emergency to look and find out if this guy has, a drug problem, a drinking problem, if he wrongfully killed umpteen other pets. I mean, I've got other people's complaints here against the vet that killed Buffy, and I found out all this stuff. And I didn't even know there was a board. If I had, I would have checked him out. I liked him for a long time. He had, he'd done some good stuff for my dogs. I referred customers to him as a dog trainer. He referred people to me. It was kind of a good business thing. And, but all of a sudden it's like he went from pretending to care to he didn't even return my calls. I was calling him and texting him in the night, and, he didn't even return a message. And then when I knew he was awake, because he texted me, she'll be all right or something. So I called him a couple times in a row. He didn't even answer the phone. So at that point, I knew I don't trust this guy. And I went somewhere else, but it was too late. She was dead.
Sandy, I have a question regarding the medical records that you eventually got from him. As you reviewed them, did you find them to be accurate, or did you find comments and statements that were lies?
You wouldn't believe this. I've got I'm going to guess, 14-page handwritten letter from him on his, stationery. And he even gave me, I forget which page numbers, let's say it was like page 3. He gave me like 4 copies of it where he crossed off, rewrote it, changed it. And then he didn't even give me all his final copies. He gave me all the proof copies with it. And that's where it says, she bled to death in her mother's arms as an opening line. And I'm like, I don't know a doctor in the world that would write that. And how it was going to destroy my life. And I'm going, at the time, I had no idea it was going to destroy my life. I mean, I've had dogs and deaths and, horses, family, whatever. And that's part of life, and we accept it. But this murder is not acceptable, okay? Even suicide is hard to accept, but at least the person did it. But when somebody else inflicts it upon you and it's not a crime scene, it's like you go there for help. You're perfectly young, healthy, happy, and all of a sudden you have this excruciating, painful death. I mean, to me, that's just cold-blooded. He butchered her. And then for the state to turn around, and they had their own expert witness in the report, and I have it right here. He had no knowledge of this, Jaffe Animal Hospital or this vet. He had no knowledge of me or my training business, looked at everything, and ended up telling the state, that Jaffe was responsible for all this stuff. And this was the state's own stuff. I mean, so they went from this permanent notification, which I know it's time consuming and people like to look at pictures instead of read, but if you go on Justice for Buffy's page on Facebook, I have the court certified transcripts that cost me a fortune where they actually did call him danger to the public and all that stuff. And then, when they turned around and changed it to suspension, they turned around congratulating him less than a year later. He's all cured now and back to work. I don't understand how the final word. I remember one of the people there, the prosecutor or something, when, I know you don't like it, but the final order is the final. And I go, which ones? You change them every couple months, And yeah, right now I'm probably sounding maybe stronger than I was or angry, but for the first 3 years, I just sat in the chair and cried and did nothing and tried to find justice, but it's a travesty. It's absolutely horrible. It's just how
Sandy,
much of it.
I'm sorry. There was a time where Buffy spent the overnight hours in his office. Is that right?
No.
Oh, she never did. Okay.
No, I stayed there. Like I said, I was the receptionist just because I didn't want anybody interrupting him.
Okay.
And, when I heard that big bang and he said, get the blankety blank out of here, I mean, I did look through the window, but I didn't bother him. But I seen a cat sitting there while he's doing surgery on my dog. I mean, what kind of sanitary is that? He
Right.
never gave a fluid or an IV. I'm not educated, but my horse was dehydrated. So when he took her off the table, I don't know what he gave her, but her eyes were glazed over. I saw dead dogs that didn't look that bad. And I picked up her skin, and I knew she was dehydrated because of the horse. And so I asked him to give her fluids, and he got very wordy and angry with me. He ended up giving her a couple bags of fluids, but at one point I ran out to my car, which was right in front of the place. I wasn't gone 30 seconds. And this dog went from being completely unconscious, couldn't wake her, just these horrible looking glazed eyes. And when I came back, she was sitting up, and I was like, what did you do? What did you give her? And he says, nothing. She just got upset because you left. And I'm like, man, if I ever thought there was somebody lying, it's like that dog could not be woken. And in 30 seconds, she's sitting up. So, and then I said, I'm not taking her home. I'm going to emergency. And all of a sudden, he got nice. And, now don't do that. Well, see, now I'm thinking maybe it's because he knew that they would see what he did, because the autopsy from the other vet said, like the dog wasn't even properly stitched. She was going to bleed to death because he didn't even stitch her right. But anyway, I was like, I'll take her to emergency. I don't care if I sleep on your bathroom floor. I am not taking her home like this. And he kept insisting I take her home. She needs rest. It was a bad surgery. Everything I touched bled. I'm starting to wonder. I don't even want to say what I think now, but I really feel like it was beyond cruel. But anyway, he's like, no, if you take her to emergency, she'll die. She needs to be resting and all this stuff. And I was texting him all night. She's in pain. What am I going to do? What am I going to do? And, I wanted to give her another one of those. I forgot what he gave me. He gave me something to give her, but it didn't work anyway. I mean, I remember as I was leaving there, I told him I had bought her some ground sirloin or something. And he had this cynical look on his face, and he goes, "Oh, she's not going to eat." Like, I really believe he just did this wrong, beyond wrong.
S- Sandy, so from the time you filed with the Florida board until their first decision, which was the permanent revocation, what period of time passed?
Oh, that took about a year. They have a 2-year statute of limitations. Now, I was never going to sue. To me, I didn't want blood money. And, I think if I had it to do over again, I'd have did it, just give the money to a rescue group or the Cougars Club or something. Just, to warn people. But I wouldn't even buy a pair of sandals with Buffy's blood. I was like, take your money and stuff it. I'm not for sale. You're not buying me. I don't want anything from you. And I just want my dog back. That's all I want. But they had this 2-year statute. So it took about a year from the investigation to the probable cause to the administrative complaint to the appeal to this to that. So even if somebody wanted to, and I know there's people that have, they lose so much time in the stall that I don't know. It makes it hard. I just feel like they're protecting their own. I don't
That's
know
what
why these people don't.
they set
Right.
themselves up for success, their success, not yours or mine or anyone else's. That's
And,
long-standing knowledge. Everyone knows that.
and it sounds like he wasn't even remorseful. I mean, did he even offer you any kind of sympathy?
There was a couple times he put on the theatrical tears, which I could not believe because, I didn't know Scott back then. And Scott came up with that term about bad actor. But I remember sitting at the hearing from early in the morning, like say 8 o'clock in the morning, till they called him up late in the day. And he went from sitting there stone faced cold to crying, like he did with me in the one time when he was like, "Oh, I'm so sorry." And it was like, man, you belong in Hollywood because this is not the same guy who said, "I'm not the snake, I'm the head of the snake," and threatened me not to report him and, screamed and yelled and turned burgundy red and told me, "Get out of here, blankety blank, and let me do my job." I mean, I saw all this hate and anger in him. And all of a sudden, you can just go from that to these tears. And, you know, I don't understand it. I did let him pay for the autopsy and the cremation. But I'll tell you what, even that, and it's not at all about money to me, but even that wasn't even the purchase price of Buffy. I mean, but it's like all the money in the world can't buy it back to life. And truthfully, I'm probably one of those people that hate it. I don't have money. I don't want it. I used to have it. Find out it's the love of money is the root of all evil. So I didn't want
Always.
anything. He
Always.
sent me a check one time. I almost felt like, well, I can say I believe, I guess. I don't know for a fact, but I felt like he got wind that I had called the board because I was talking to somebody there and I hadn't spoken to him in quite a long time. And like all of a sudden, right after I talked to him, a check comes in the mail out of the blue in huge, obnoxious print. He writes Buffy on the memo for $150. Okay, like really? That was just like another slap in the face.
Right.
And not only that, but it let me know that he knew, or to me, and it felt like he knew that I had called the board. And I never cashed that check, but I did give it to the board as proof of, here's another thing. I mean, he's almost saying he's wrong in the letters he wrote and all this other stuff. But they said he was wrong. They called him, a danger to the public, incompetent. And you can have your license back. To me, it's like, what a perfect profession for a drug addict to be in, too. They got a back room full of narcotics. At least human doctors have to account when they give you pain pills. But he could just claim he gave your dog Valium and another dog morphine. There was a story on the news from I think it was the Martin County Sheriff, where people were actually beating up their pets to go to the vets to get narcotics for themselves. I mean, why isn't all of this stuff being, let's tighten the drawers here? And why would anybody who had a drug problem ever have a DEA license anyway?
Right.
It doesn't even make sense to me.
It's one of the few times a veterinarian can lose his or her license is if it's if there's a DEA complaint, if the vet is using veterinary drugs for personal use, that kind of thing. Then the board, once the DEA pulls their drug license, the board has no option but to pull their veterinary license as well. But that's, as we all know, that's one of the very few times that there's any kind of day of reckoning for
No,
veterinarians.
I didn't see that either, Scott. I'm sorry, but I found out he lost his DEA license before for mishandling narcotics. You know, whether that was the expiration date or what, I don't know, but he did lose it more than once. And when they gave it back to him, one of the
Oh.
stipulations was that he
Wow.
got his DEA license back. And his lawyer, you know, we were, I think, St. Peter, Tampa. I went all over the state to all these hearings every few months. And by the way, I've gone to other people's hearings that had nothing to do with Buffy, and I just watched the, you know, lack of action. A lot of heavy words and no action is what I saw. But you know, they remember them saying to this, you know, well, you have to have your DEA license, and the lawyer was pretty, oh yes, we'll have that. We'll go down to Palm Beach and get it next week. And I'm going, how can you get that when somebody's got a problem? Would you give the keys to the bar to the drunk? I don't get this. And so, you know, it just doesn't make sense to me at all.
You know, I noticed at Joey's hearing, there was a very well-dressed gentleman, distinguished looking gentleman that sat in the front row, and all he did was stare at the members of the Florida board. And I have my suspicions. I won't speculate here, but I have my suspicions about who he is and what his function is. Have you ever been told or been made aware of such an individual?
Oh yeah, I think I saw that same guy, very well dressed, distinguished, tall, elderly guy, and I felt like even if the board was going to do their job and shut someone down, maybe this person was going to make sure it didn't happen. I don't know,
Yeah.
but I saw that in
That was
more
my
than one
guess too.
state.
Yeah.
I
That was
saw
my
that
guess.
particular person you described in more than
Yep.
one state.
Yeah.
You know,
Interesting.
yeah.
Okay. Well, do you have any final comments or anything else you want to say?
Well, I'm going to ask people to, there's those two petitions. I mean, collectively, there's about 15,000 signatures. And one of them is, I'm not saying every vet in the world should be drug tested, but I think anybody who has substance abuse problems, whether it's drugs or alcohol, should be randomly tested. Now, I've had people
Absolutely.
say, well, who's supposed to pay for that? And I said, well, I think the vet who has the problem. I don't think the taxpayers in the state should have to pay for that.
No.
I mean, you got a problem, you got a drug problem, then you pay for having yourself tested.
Right.
And that's one of them. And the other one was to, you know, put up the status of their license on the wall. So when you go in there,
Yeah.
like I remember going to a sushi place in Palm Beach, and the Board of Health had just reinstated their license. I was like, I don't think I want to eat here. Well, if I had known that vet had, you know, a decade of priors, I would have never taken my
gone
dogs there.
Right.
And I'm sure if you had known about your dogs that had all these complaints,
I wouldn't
know,
have
people
let
knew.
that guy touch him. I mean, he was the substitute vet that day. Joey's regular vet wasn't there, unfortunately. He was there the next day. And when we brought him back, he did the right thing. Unfortunately, it was 30 hours too late. But yeah, I mean, that information is invaluable and should be available for anybody that walks in the door of the facility, so they can make an informed decision. If they see someone's on probation, obviously the first question is, what is the nature of the probation? Why are they on probation? So yeah, there are some things that definitely need to be improved and enhanced. And maybe one day we'll see that all happen. All
I
right,
hope
Sam.
so. You know,
Yeah.
people have life and death in their hands. Okay?
Right.
And they want this called animal property for whatever reason. But, you know, these dogs have a mind, a heart. They think, they feel, they show happiness, anger, playfulness, same moods we have. They're alive, living beings.
Right.
And, you know, but whether it's what people doctor or animal doctor, I think that whole profession needs more accountability because life's at stake. If a hairdresser messes up, Well, you don't have to lose a license. Your hair's going to grow back. She
Right.
didn't kill anybody,
Right.
you know, or
Right.
any other profession for that matter.
Yeah.
But this is life and death. So if somebody has that kind of a title and a
Right.
DEA license, they should be clean, drug-free, and competent and good.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, thank you for joining us, Sandy. We appreciate your time. Thank you for telling us Buffy's story. And all we can do is hope for much improvement in the future. And hopefully the landscape for companion animals will be greatly enhanced and improved in the next 3 to 5 years.
You know, I appreciate what you're doing because too many have died in vain, and we're just not going to let that happen. I know
Right.
you're not going to let Joe die in vain, and I'm not going to let Buffy die in vain.
Okay, good. Okay, Colleen, you got anything you want to say?
Yeah, your story today will continue to spread and inspire. I know it's not always the easiest thing to talk about, but what you have done already and what we continue to do together as a community really is making an impact. I mean, I'm just so thankful to have you here to speak to that experience.
Yeah, and if you haven't already done it, go to her Justice for Buffy page, and you can see the media. It has, you know, the board is there, the Attorney General's there, the vet was there, his, you know, everybody's there, and they did a couple minutes interview with me. And but anyway, just you can just see exactly the lack of justice, you know.
Yeah.
Okay. Thanks, Sandy.
Okay, thank you,
All
you
right.
both.
All right, you're
Thank
welcome.
you.
Okay.
Have a good one.
Okay. All right. We'll see you next time. 2 weeks from now, we'll be back with another victim of veterinary negligence. Next Sunday is Joey's Legacy Roundtable with Carrie Hyde. Guests will be Dr. Gene Dodds and our Illinois attorney, Anna Morrison Ricordati. And always good time with both of them. They're very knowledgeable. And we'll see you next Sunday. Have a good week. Take care. Bye, Colleen.
Bye. Have a good one.